Welcome to this special edition of the Minor Consult, where I speak with leaders shaping our world in diverse ways. I recently had the opportunity to sit down with the legendary women's basketball coach, Tara VanDerveer. She's one of the winningest coaches in NCAA basketball history, amassing an incredible 1,216 wins. She led Stanford Cardinal women's basketball to 3 NCAA championships, coached the U.S. women's basketball team to an Olympic gold in 1996, and, not surprisingly, has been inducted into the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. Tara shared insights about her coaching career, her approach to building and motivating winning teams, and her forecast for the future of one of the nation's most popular sports. So without further ado, let's go to our episode.
Congratulations. Thank you for being here.
I'm glad it was cold out so I could wear my jacket. You guys could see it. So good morning. It's great to be here. Thank you, Lloyd.
Thank you.
Coach Minor.
Exactly. We all are, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
And I think that's an important message to discuss today. So, Tara, can you go back to when you got interested in basketball, but a little bit on the film,
Sure.
but could you expand on that a little bit more and how you decided, you weren't always sure you were going to be a basketball coach. I think you thought you maybe be a lawyer at one point.
I actually thought about medicine one time until chemistry in college, and I said no. I first played basketball in physical education class when I was in the 5th grade, and I just loved it. And my parents are both teachers, and their Friday night was going to the Y, jumping on the trampoline, swimming, so it was always being very active. I'm a skier, biker, everything. But basketball just grabbed me. But there were no teams for girls, so it was very frustrating because, I would play with the boys, and there were girls and boys when I first started out, but as I got a little older, the boys didn't want me to play. So I bought the best basketball, and if they wanted to use my ball, I got to be in the game. And that was how I got to play, so I figured that out. But it was very challenging because there weren't teams for girls, and I was out there playing by myself. And in the 9th grade, I was taking algebra, and my mom and dad called me in and said, Tara, I'd be out there for hours. And they say, Tara, come in and do your algebra homework. Basketball is never going to take you anywhere. And I'm like, algebra's not taking me anywhere. So, but it was, I just loved the game. And I didn't see any future in it because there weren't teams for women. This was before Title IX, which was in 1972. So I think I'm older than everyone in this room. But it was really a very painful thing to love something, and I couldn't get to do it. But then I got to play in college a little bit, and I went to Indiana, and I studied basketball. Coach Knight was there, and I watched his practice. I took his coaching class. It's just been a love affair with basketball. So I've never felt I had to go to a job job. I just woke up and I love watching tape. I love going to the gym. I got to work with all these great players and work at Stanford. I loved it. So it's just been really fun. I just have to pinch myself because I've had such a great life.
That's fantastic. Well, can you talk about your coaching philosophy? You spoke about it before,
Sure.
But to continue to be successful and every season, every game, you have to reinvent yourself. You have to form a team, keep the team motivated. But first, maybe from a broad perspective, coaching philosophy, then personally, how you maintain your stamina, your focus, your success over a long period of time.
Well, I kind of chuckled because I interviewed for a couple of jobs. I've not interviewed for too many, but I interviewed in Montana. And I was interviewed by the players from the Montana team, and they said the exact same thing. They said, tell us about your coaching philosophy, and they sat right in front of me, and I said, work. And they kind of looked at me like I had two heads, and I said, would you like me to elaborate? And they said, yes. I said, hard work. But I didn't get that job. But I guess I start with basketball, or I just love it so much. I love to learn about it, and I want to share my enthusiasm for basketball with all of the players, my staff, and just every day, just coming to work with a lot of enthusiasm and not being discouraged. Like I don't know exactly what's going on. I don't think I'm going to get replaced by AI, but maybe I would as a coach. But all the things that you're dealing with, I get a little bit of a sense of maybe anxiety in the room, a little worry, challenges ahead, and I just in coming even to Stanford, I called my parents. I had taken the Stanford job. I was at Ohio State. We had a great team. I mean, we had kids that were just fabulous. But Stanford, to me, is the ultimate challenge. And I had taken the job. My dad had gone to Dartmouth, and he said, I called him. I said, Dad, I'm thinking about taking the Stanford job. I kind of fudged. And he said, do not take that job. It's a graveyard job. You can never win at Stanford. It's impossible to recruit there. And so finally, I let him go on. I said, Dad, I've taken the job. And he hung up the phone. He said to my mother, she will be unemployed, coming home, living with us in 3 months. So, I knew taking the job, like the team had won 5 games the year before. But I'm like, I like challenges. So my philosophy is bring it on. I'm going to do the absolute best I can. I can go home and look in the mirror every night and just say, yes, I did the best I could today. And I'm enthusiastic about basketball. I have confidence that I know what I'm doing, and if I don't, I'm going to learn or ask people. And just, put together a great team. Lloyd, I love the beginning of your segment with the orchestra. I use that with our team, that we're part of an orchestra. I'm the conductor. Some nights there's going to be different solos, but everyone's got to keep the beat. And it's, I love working at Stanford. And I told my dad, I said, Dad, Stanford's not a graveyard job. It does involve digging. It's a gold mine job. And
You made it.
I haven't had to move home to the basement, yeah.
Of course, recruiting is a big part of being a successful, highly successful coach.
Right.
What was your philosophy? How did you identify, develop talent, and how did you described it? You have to have individual talent, but you also have to have players that are playing on the team, that really believe in the team and have that spirit and dedication. What did you look for as you were interviewing women and getting to know their talents individually? And how did you pick the ones that you knew were both individually talented and were going to be good team players? You said the importance of people and the people in this room, and who's in the hospital back there anyways? I'm worried about that. But there are a few people still
there. There's, again, I'll come back to my dad. You don't win the Kentucky Derby on a donkey. You have to have players. You have to have great talent. And I met with my assistants when I first got to Stanford, and I hired, I think, great assistants. And I said, we have 3 priorities. Number 1, recruit. Number 2, recruit. Number 3, recruit. Goodbye. And that was going out and really identifying. And one thing is, honestly, I am not really good at identifying individual talent. And so I made sure that I hired assistants that were, and they are. And like we would go, and they have, summer basketball where you can have, there are thousands of kids in the Chicago, it's a convention center. There are over 100 courts, and you have to go and watch and keep a schedule of watching these different players. And I said to my assistant one time, oh, I like that player. And my assistant said, well, we will recruit her over my dead body. And I'm like, okay. So, or another player I might see, I said, oh, she's really good. And I said, what's her name? And my assistant said, 2 Point. I'm like, oh, she had a 2-point grade point. So we weren't recruiting her either. But, it is really key. And, when on the video, when you saw that we had 40-something All-Americans, you win with great players, but people that also are great teammates. I've been in a situation where, obviously we like to talk about our successes, but I've been in a situation with a staff that were great individual players, but did not work together. And I told them, I said, as good as you are individually, this is not working because we don't have the collaboration that we need. And so I think collaboration and teamwork are the most important thing. It's, just getting the best out of everyone, doing things together, not individually. And for our team, I use the analogy of a hand that, everything's got to be, you've got 5 players out there, you've got to work together. You can't have one finger going off doing the thing it wants to do by itself. So it's the teamwork and quality of people, their integrity, their commitment to your team is really, really important.
Of course, developing the team once you've recruited the players is critical to success. Right. And that means giving people feedback, keeping people motivated, but giving people feedback. And everyone in this room is a manager of people and of areas in the portfolio. What was your approach? You must have needed to figure out for individuals what type of feedback was going to be more effective given their personality relative to others, but what was your general approach for, when people are underperforming, to talk about that, right. And to keep people motivated, working really, really hard. Like you said, coming to Stanford, right. They have to perform academically, and they've got to be stellar athletes. How did you do that?
Lloyd, I think that's a great question. I think feedback is specific, direct feedback is what helps players improve. Yep. So, and I think that what I would want to do is establish trust first with the player that I'm working with, so that in fact I could say to you, Lloyd, we got to work on your left hand, or Lloyd, I'm sorry, but we need to make a change in our lineup, and I'm going to start someone else, and I need you to come off the bench. And to have that conversation with the player is, it's hard. And sometimes, they're just to have the relationship first. And there's a quote that Maya Angelou, I might massacre it. You had John Kennedy's quote great, and I love quotes, but it's not what you do, it's not what you say. People will forget what you do, they will forget what you say, but they will never forget how you make them feel. And so, like everyone in this room, when you had a great teacher. How many people have had a great teacher? Everybody's had one great teacher. Or how many people have played sports maybe and have had a great coach? So what does that coach do? And you want to be that kind of coach for other people. And as an example, for me, I was a head coach when I was 23 years old. And I had to learn by the seat of my pants. I didn't have a whole lot of training, so I had to learn it by myself. Thank goodness you doctors don't have to do that. But as an adult, I wanted to learn how to play the piano. Does anyone play the piano here? It is hard, but I thought I could teach myself in 2 weeks. So I had a keyboard, I'm going to play, and I just wanted to sit down and rock like you just have this fantasy about that. And after 2 weeks, I realized this is not working. So I got piano lessons from a fabulous piano teacher. And as a coach, she was great. And I was making CDs in 1 year. And it wasn't because I was so good, but she was so good. But she was able to take me to a place I couldn't get by myself. And so as a coach, that's what I want to do. I want to take players, I want to take our staff to a place they can't get by themselves through feedback, by saying very specifically and very honestly and very directly, this is what I need to do. Now, sometimes, there might be in a game where I'm like, get back on defense. It's like loud, or, and that, but it's, they know it's not hurtful, and it's, you saw a lot of hugging in the video. There's a lot of emotion in basketball, and there's a lot of emotion in medicine. This jacket is symbolic of every win. Well, each of you should have 2 or 3 of these jackets because of the lives you've touched and the maybe lives you've saved. And but feedback is what helps players grow, and they have to want it. Hopefully the people that you're working with come to you and say, how can I do a better job? Like players would say to me, indirectly, I want to play more. How can I contribute more? And so I say, well, this is what you need to do. So.
That's great. That's great.
Thank you.
Also in a career, being a head coach over 40 years, you had to maintain personal resilience. reinventing the team at least every season, and to some extent probably every game. How did you do that? And what you talked about learning the piano as an adult. What other things did you do to keep yourself vibrant, energetic, positive, and in a winning spirit?
Well, I think the first thing is I knew I had to, in order to be someone that could be a great, energetic person for our team, I had to take care of myself first. So it might be, working out. I try to swim every other day. I either ride the bike or walk my dog every day. So it's starting with taking care of myself, eating right, and doing all the things that I'm sure you tell your patients to do, but doing it for yourself. And I would also take some time during the summer. I go to a lake house. I love to water ski. In August, I skied 26 out of 28 days. I mean, I'm excited about doing things for myself. But I think that that's the kind of the foundation for me, is that I'm excited, I'm happy, and so that I can help other people better. I'm better equipped to be, a good family person in my family, or a good friend, and then also a good coach for the people I coach.
And of course, you've also coached and trained leaders. More than a dozen of your former assistant coaches are now head coaches, including your successor as head coach at Stanford. How did you identify their talent and help them along their career progression, and your approach to giving them feedback and helping them? And I bet they still call you to ask for advice.
They do. Well, with like someone like Kate Pay, she's the person that took over for me. She was my associate head coach for 17 years. And what I do is I'm an observer, I'm a copier. So like in basketball coaching, I can copy what another coach does, and I really study what other people do, and I learn a lot, honestly, from our players. We had a situation where, if I could just tell you quickly about 3 players that I've really learned from and learned about leadership. We had a young lady that played on our team, and she didn't play very much. She sat and hugged the water cooler. Her name is Angela Taylor. And I asked for everyone to say, what do you contribute to our team? And she wrote down spread sunshine. And I'm like, we won a national championship, and she hardly played. And that to me is leadership, being positive, being encouraging, being someone that, encourages other people and supports other people. And that's something on our team that, again, you're not always going to be the star, but you support other people. Jennifer Azzi was on the same team. She was one of the starters. And Jennifer, as a leader, I learned about her. She played on our Olympic team, and we went to Ukraine. We played in Ukraine. We called them our cousins because we played them so much. But we were leaving at 3:30 in the morning to go. We were leaving Ukraine. We were in Kyiv, and we were coming back to the United States. And so we're going out on the bus, and as we were going out on the bus, it was freezing. It was in January, and there were 15 or 20 poor women with very thin jackets and bad teeth begging outside of our bus. And everyone got on the bus. But Jennifer was coming late. And I'm thinking, where's Jennifer? 3:29, Jennifer comes out and sees the women. She takes money out of her pockets, like, who was going to spend Ukraine money back in the United States anyway? And then she opens her suitcase and gives it to all the women. And everyone got off the bus and did the same thing. And these women went home very happy. But to me, that was leadership. That was, and everyone saw that that was the right thing to do. And I was so proud of Jennifer. But at the same time, I was so ashamed of myself. How come I didn't think of that? But we had, we've had so many young people I've been so inspired by. One of our captains of our team, Jamila Weidman, a great player. We went to the Final Four. We were a fabulous team, and we were up 17 in the first half and lost the game. And it was like the locker room was devastating. Players on the team you didn't see this on the film, they're crying on the floor. They're distraught. And I got up in front of the team. I'm like, the press is coming in here in 2 minutes. You guys, come on. And no reaction. Jamila Weidman gets up in front of this team and she goes, pick your heads up. And they all looked at her and she said, I would rather lose with you than win with anyone else in any other locker room. And, it brought everyone together.
Yep.
And the last young lady I'll tell you about is She's a doctor. So this is one of your people. She's in your tribe. Her name is Chris McMurdo, and she came from South Carolina. She was #1 in everything, high school, everything, All-American, everything. And her mom and dad came out for a visit. Her mom, I said to my assistants, her mom would like to go to the mall. Her dad would like to go to SLAC. He's a nuclear physicist. Who would like to go to SLAC? Nobody. I said, who would like to go to the mall? 3 hands shot up. So I went to SLAC with her dad, and he loved it. It was way over my head, but she did come to Stanford. I picked her up on the very first day, picture her driving into campus, into Palm Drive, looking at the church, beautiful day like today. And I said to Chris, what are you thinking about right now? Here she's coming in as a freshman, incoming freshman. I'm driving, the beautiful palm trees. I thought maybe she should say, oh, what are the dorms like? What is the food like? What is the team like? What are you like? And instead, she turned to me and she looked at me and she said, Tara, I want to make a difference in this world. I almost crashed into a palm tree. I'm like, this is an incoming freshman at Stanford. And 2 years later, she ran into my office and she goes, Tara, I was working in the emergency room and I saved someone's life today. And I'm like, you have made a difference. But she is a palliative care doctor. Wonderful. And she is fabulous. She lives in Nashville. But these are, the people that you meet, the people that you're around, these are people that I'm inspired by. And I don't want to be weak link. I don't want to let them down. I want to be there for our team. So as a leader, I hope that I'm mentoring them and encouraging them and helping them.
One more question, then we'll open it up to the audience for questions. But you mentioned when you were starting to play basketball that there just were so few opportunities for women.
Right.
And there has been some progress. 2024 was a big year. But talk about that journey, where we are today in that journey, and where we should be headed in the future.
Well, I know one person came to a game. Is there anyone else that's ever watched a Stanford women's basketball game? Oh, wow. I'm impressed. That's awesome. Right now, it's really a great time in women's basketball. We seem to take 2 steps forward and then 1 step back. And when I was at Ohio State, and this was 1985, and we were playing Iowa, and the game was at around noon, and we're going to we go early to the gym, and I said to my assistant, it was like a traffic jam in Iowa City, and I said, what, did church let out? What's going on here? And my assistant said, Tara, these people are coming to our game. We had 22,157 people at this game. The fire marshal was mad because the gym only holds 15,000, but that's where we were 40 years ago. But now we're back to where women's basketball and women's sports are more encouraged, they're supported, and it's really exciting to see women's basketball for the first year last year outdrew the men's in terms of ratings on the television. So there are 18 million viewers, and we just want to keep growing the game and be part of something fun for young girls and young boys. And when I had a basketball camp, we had a room that had about this many people of 8-year-olds, all 8-year-old girls in Kissick Auditorium. So there are over 100 girls there, and I told my story of not playing, not going to camp, not having a scholarship, all these things I didn't do. And one little girl raised her hand and said, why was it like that? And I was like, ooh, how do I answer that question? So I said, like any other teacher, well, can anyone else answer that question? And so one of the other little girls raised her hand. She goes, sexism, like that, So, we are in a new, exciting world, and it's something that it's really great for young boys and young girls. And I had a young boy that his mom was a journalist, and the young boy said to me, do boys play basketball too? I'm like, yes, they do. So,
that's great.
But
well, maybe some questions from the audience, please. We have some microphones circulating, and love to hear from you.
I would love to hear a little bit about the course that you're teaching this quarter. What motivated you to teach the course, and what are you teaching in your quarter-long, totally oversubscribed class?
I retired, but then I decided I didn't want to totally retire, and I'm working now more than ever. Don't retire, just keep doing what you're doing. But I had, actually, in the fall, I had hip surgery. And I'm so naive, I thought last year I needed hip surgery, and I thought, well, I'll just get hip surgery at Christmas break, for like the 5 days, and then I'll be ready to go back on the court and coach. And my doctor said, no, that doesn't work that way. So I had hip surgery, and that has gone great. But I decided I'd teach a class, and it's about just like the history of basketball, her story of basketball, my story of basketball, and X's and O's and everything. And I'm excited to say it sold out in 2 hours in person, and there's like 400 people, 300 on Zoom, and it's been really fun. So I just really want to share my enthusiasm and maybe some knowledge of the game, but I'm learning so much by teaching. And do you find that as teachers, that you learn so much by being the teacher, because you have to study just as much as they do? So I have a teaching assistant, and I said to her, I said, boy, this is a lot of work. She goes, but it's fun work. So I was like, yes, it is. So I love it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for speaking with us today. I want to follow up on the whole idea of the transfer portal. You recruit someone, you nurture them, and then, that's what you do as a coach. And then as a leader, how do you deal with the disappointment of a key player going into the transfer portal?
It's painful. It is hard, but I guess some of it is also, I just always try to absolutely do my best. And if someone wants something else, I want to say, good luck to you, and I wish you the best. But when, it's just like anything, but, you might have professors that you work with that will leave Stanford, and you're like, why? I don't think there's any place better than Stanford. I love it. But, there are just sometimes that places, attract other people, and they're using, like right now, using NIL or money. And sometimes on a team, it's hard for some young players, especially when the portal is so easy to transfer. They might not start as a freshman, or things might not go their way right away. But I think that if they stick with things, they'll develop the resilience that they're going to need later on down the road. But honestly, it's there might be some players where, because we had a player that just wanted to play. All they wanted to do was play, and they weren't good enough. So I think it was good that they went somewhere where they could play. So I'm always interested in them finding a fit and them being happy. But it sometimes when it's someone that you really want part of your team, it is painful. I won't lie.
Really grateful that you're here today. So the environments change around us, and I think you heard Lloyd talk a little bit about that at the beginning. The very best coaches, of course, do many things, one of which is make halftime adjustments. Whether things are going well or whether things are going bad, you make halftime adjustments. As you think about your career and you think about the people that you had to work closely with to get to buy into those adjustments, when you had 15 or 20 minutes to make those adjustments, how did you do that? How did you bring people along in those really critical moments when things had to change fast?
That is a great question. I love it. I always felt we always played better in the second half because I could see what was happening in the first half. And sometimes you think about baseball players where they say that the pitch comes slow to them, and then they can figure out what to do. And as I got older, what helped me a lot was I watched so much video. My nickname was Video VanDerveer. So I watched so much so that I could recognize patterns, and I could say, well, this is what we need to do. So I always felt a halftime, which is probably 10 minutes, because you get 15, but you've got to let them warm up for 5. And to be very concise, very specific, very direct, this is what we need to do in the second half, and these are the changes that we need to make. Or we might even be doing well, we need to continue to do this, this, and this. And I would ask assistant coaches during the game, to chart things for me, to keep track of things. But I kind of had a sense of this is what we needed to do. And if I were to look at my career, I think that the second half was, like my mother used to always say, to friends if she was watching, don't worry, Tara's talking to them. They'll come back out and play a better second half. And I always felt that we did, because with our staff, we could make the adjustments that were needed. And sometimes you have to totally change what you're doing. I'll just tell you one quick story about the second half. We were playing Notre Dame, and you saw the end of the game where a woman blocked a shot and everyone was hugging. In this game, we're down 17. We go into halftime. We're going in the locker room, my two assistants, and one of our players runs by me, Erica McCall, and she goes, "We're down 17. We got him right where we want him." And I turned to my assistant and I said, "What game is she at?" And so we got in the locker room, and this one player, she's a fabulous player, Arike Gomawale, she has like 20 points. She's ripping us up. And so I got in there with our team. I said, "We got him right where we want him," because that's what Erica said. And sure enough, and the team said, yeah, well, okay. I said, "Now, who's going to guard Arike?" And so I said, "Okay, you're going to guard her." And I'm thinking, you can't guard your shadow. But I said, "Okay, you've got her." And we come out in the second half, and we end up winning this game. And it was just, just like we'd made some other little adjustments, but it was like really believing. If more than anything, it's not the technical stuff that you change, but it's really believing in your team and your team feeling that. And Erica's on our staff now, and we laugh about that, and she ended up blocking the shot that would have given them the win. We went to the Final Four, and the funniest thing, too, was when you're with the NCAA, they charter planes for you. So we go to the airport, and Notre Dame was at the airport at the same time. And they thought they were getting on their plane first, and they said, "No, Stanford." That was the most fun thing about it. So, but
That's great.
it was honestly, it is such a pleasure to be here with you today. And I just want to say I thank you for all that you do for Stanford and for Stanford Hospital. I've been to the hospital, and everyone said, "Well, how was it?" I said, "It was great. They were fabulous." And they said, "It's because you know you." I said, "No, it's because they have high standards at Stanford, and it's really great to be a part of your retreat today." And I'm going to stick around for lunch, and
Thank you.
anyone that wants to chat, we can chat hoops, and enjoy being here. And thank you for all that you do. I really appreciate it.
Tara, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Minor Consult with me, Stanford School of Medicine Dean Lloyd Minor. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion with legendary basketball coach Tara VanDerveer. Please send your questions by email to the Minor Consult at theminorconsult.com, and check out our website, theminorconsult.com, for updates, episodes, and more. To get the latest episodes of the Minor Consult, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to our next episode. Until then, stay safe, stay well, and be kind.